All right, so I want to talk about automation before we get into expanding the rest of this song here. If you've already gone ahead and done some of that, that's fine. You can start adding this in as well. So what is automation? It just is moving things automatically. So we can make certain parameters move on their own in a way that we program, which is really cool. So kind of in the same way that when you fade in the edge of a clip, you're causing the volume to fade in over time, we can do that volume fading without using the little fade thing on an event. We can create all sorts of different volume changes with this automation. So that's what we're going to get into. In order to begin adding automation, there's a few ways to do it. The first thing to know is that you can automate basically every single parameter within Studio One, not just volume, but say I go into my instrument here, presence, which is playing my flute, I can automate literally any one of these things in here. Now we haven't even talked about what they do yet, so you're probably not going to want to automate them, but it is possible to do, and we'll talk about how to do that. The first thing to know is you need to push A. That brings up the automation display. See how all these tracks change? That's the A key, A for automation. It's also this button up here. This is the automation button. And we're not seeing anything right now. So what I'm going to do as an example, let's take this part here, and I'm going to go for the drums. I'll push solo so we can hear them now. And where it says display off, this is where we select our automation. Now, depending on how your track is set up, you may have some automatic automation ready to go, or you may not. Depends on if you did everything that I mentioned in the options section a little while ago. If we click on this, you should see these two things, volume and pan. If you do not, you can come here, add or remove. This is where we can add different types of automation. So right now, these are the only options, volume, pan, and mute. And so mute is over here. But if these were not here, for instance, if I remove volume, it appears here, and I can push add, and now volume becomes a parameter that I can adjust. And I can change the color if I want to say like that. If I wanted to automate the mute, like turning the mute button on and off automatically, I could add that as a parameter as well. For now, we're going to stick with pan and volume. So to automate, it's very simple. This blue line represents the volume. Where it is right now is the untouched natural amount. It's at 0 here. Here's my volume slider. It's saying 0. This line is currently at 0. If I make a point, I just click and I get this point. Now I can click another point and I can drag it however I want, and this is going to change the volume automatically over time. Check it out. I'll put it all the way to the bottom. You see it just disappears, and now if we maybe do a little bit louder, like that, it gets louder over time. So I'll just Command Z back to normal. That's the first thing. You add points by clicking. You delete points by double clicking. So if I have this point here, I don't want it to do this anymore, double click, goes away. This point, double click, goes away. If I want to, I can come up with my range selection. You see when I get this little plus icon, select a range, and then I get this little thing, this I-beam. I can grab the I-beam and pull the whole section up or down at one time like this. Check that out. So for the length of time that this is down, the volume will go down. So I'm going to Command Z to get back to normal. Now when you're making a curve or a line like this, you get this little dot in the middle. This lets you change the curve type. And there's a variety of other types you can get that I'm not going to talk about right now, but these are basically the main ones you need to know about, whether you want it to start quickly and then fade out slowly, or fade out slowly at the beginning and then go quickly like this, or the opposite. So I can get rid of this again, double click, double click. Let's say I've got a few points here. I've got this, I've got this, I've got this, and this. I can come in and select them all just by clicking and dragging, and I can move them around like this. Now, there is some locking going on here, like it's connected to the grid, right? So I can turn that grid off, as you know, with N. If I let go and press N, now I've got no grid going on. I like my grid, so I'm going to put it back on. And then there's some other commands you can know. if you move, but you want to get even finer movement, like smaller amounts of movement, you can push the Shift key, and then your mouse makes the thing move just a tiny bit, and you can do these very fine edits while you hold down the Shift key. The other thing to know is that if you click and say you have this down here and you want to move this along but not change the height of this, you can click, hold Control or Command, and the value will stay locked. That means the up and down will stay locked, but you can still move side to side. So it stays perfectly where it is, but you can still move it side to side. These things will become important the more you start using automation. You'll have times where you have something very specifically set up a way you like it, and you want to move it to somewhere else, but you don't want to change any of the values. You don't want it to, you still want it to lock to the grid, but you don't want it to get higher or lower. So that's what that command is for there. Holding Command or Control can value lock so that you can move side to side, but it won't let you move up and down. So as an example, if I do something crazy here, I'll do this, put a curve on this one, put a curve on this one, maybe not so steep. And this can go up. Let's listen to that. See what I mean? You get all sorts of different shapes. It will follow exactly whatever you draw. So that's pretty cool. Now if I don't want them all, I can just select them, push delete, and they're gone. Coming over here, we have this little power icon. That means that if I have some automation and this is turned on, it's going to read the automation. So if I turn this off, nothing happens. If I turn it back on, it follows whatever I have put here. This brings us to an important point, which is that when you have automation drawn into your track like this volume slider won't really work for you anymore. I can change it now, but as soon as I push play, it's going to start reading whatever that automation says. So now the automation is the volume control. If there's no automation, like if this button is turned off, I can freely move this and it will stay wherever I put it. But as soon as I turn automation on, it's going to do exactly what the automation is telling it to do. So to say that in a simple way, when you automate parameters, their normal controls don't work anymore, because the normal controls will be overwritten or controlled by the automation. So you won't be able to move your volume slider or any other parameter that you automate in a normal way, because as soon as you move it and push play, it will snap it back to where the automation says it should be. So the other parameter that we can modify is pan. Now we haven't talked about panning yet, so it's a good time to do that. Panning is your side to side on the stereo spectrum, your left speaker and your right speaker. Before I do the panning, I need to come into my volume and get rid of that automation, or I could just turn it off, but I'll get rid of it so that we can hear the whole clip. And I'll come down to my panning, and now check this out. Left, right. So pan controls which speaker and how much of that speaker gets used for a certain sound. So you can move sounds around the stereo spectrum. There's another way, a simpler way to adjust panning that we haven't gotten to yet, which is in the mixing window here, which we'll talk about a little later after we're done our arrangement. But in terms of automating the pan, we can do that here. So for instance, I could click for the pan to go up like this, and up. When you pan up, that means you're going left, and when you pan down, you're going right. So we can go up, down, which is left, back to right. So sometimes you can get some cool effects like that. So volume and pan, these are the things we're interested in automating right now. You don't have to do automation on everything, just when it's necessary. Only when you want something to move side to side, or you want it to get louder and quieter over time, that's when you use automation. You don't use it just because you're supposed to. It's good to find a place to use it where it's important to use. So I'll give an example of that right now. I'm going to actually turn all this automation off that I put here. And I'm going to add a new track, so I will unsolo this. And here's our transition point. Now I've got this cool loop here, which is just a piano falling down the scale like that, note by note. And if I grab this, pull it into my session, line it up. What I'm going to do, if you remember, I can push Command R or Control R when I select the event, and it reverses it. So let's hear that. Pretty cool sound. Now I'm going to use some automation to make it smoother. So I'll push A, come down to my volume automation, and I want it to start a little bit quieter, maybe here, and then I want it to finish maybe at full volume. That's pretty good. And I want it to pan. So I'm going to come down to my panning, and I want it to start at the left, and then over time, by the end, I want it to go to the right. Now, because the volume is low here and high here, it's kind of hard to hear that it was panned to the left and went to the right. If you listen again. So I'm going to use my curve and bend upwards so it stays left for a little longer and then goes right at the end. Now you can hear it move. So that's fading in with volume automation and panning side to side with my pan automation to create this cool transition effect. So that's another way to increase the impact of the main loop, adding another element that comes in right before it and kind of fades in. The more things fade in right before that drop of the beat, then it feels like the beat has more impact. That's all we're going to talk about automation for now, so have fun with that when you're exploding your arrangement out.